Hi, my name is Gordy Hogue, and this is Community Connection. Each of us have stories that help us understand each other and help to bring our community closer together. I have been very fortunate to have met many interesting people who've had a positive, profound impact on our community and far beyond. People who've had incredible life experiences and fascinating stories. Community Connections is about these people and about their stories. I'm sure you'll enjoy meeting these amazing people as much as I have. Thank you. Please enjoy. Welcome to Community Connections. My name is Gordy Hogue, and I am delighted to welcome today's guest. He is a long-serving family physician, family doctor in our community. He has served as the medical director at Peace Arch Hospital. He is a community-minded individual, and he's a thoughtful, compassionate, and caring family man. Welcome, Dr. Glenn Anderson. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Gord. It's a pleasure to be here for you.
So can you talk a little bit about where you were born and growing up and how, when you first thought you might want to be a doctor?
Sure. Well, I was born in Calgary, and my father was a clergyman there. And shortly after I was born, like within weeks, we moved to Ontario. We were in Owen Sound and then in Ottawa for many years. And then in 1959, we moved to Edmonton, where my dad was a pastor of a large church there for 15 years, and where I did all my high school and my university training. So I graduated from the University of Alberta and my residency in 1973. And then I had an invitation from Dr. Bill Laskowski, who had preceded me in White Rock, to come out to White Rock to start general practice. So I came out here and was interviewed by your dad and a couple of other guys, and accepted their invitation to come. And so when my oldest son, David, was 2 weeks old, we moved out to White Rock and rented a little house, and then bought our first home down in Ocean Park and had another son. And here we are 47 years later. I've been living here in this most beautiful place on earth, I think, probably in the South Surrey White Rock area.
And I'm sure when you said Owen Sound to Dad, that must have connected with him too.
Yes.
Having lived in that area, I'm sure.
Yeah. Your dad was very, I was just a young guy. I was basically right out of school, and I came here, and my office ended up being really close to your dad's. And he was a great mentor to me because I just, I was ignorant, frankly. I was brand new and I had no experience, and he had all the experience in the world. And it was a real pleasure to work with him. I'll never forget going to your house as newly married and new graduate, and we went there to your big old house on down by the park there.
Vista, yeah.
And it was a Christmas party, and there were lots of people, and your mom and dad were really gracious to Lorna and I, and I'll never forget that. And it was a great start working with your dad and with Ken Middleton and the other guys, and it was a good start. It gave me a really good foundation in family medicine.
When did you realize you wanted to be a doctor, or how did that come about?
So after I finished high school in Edmonton, my father was a pastor. We didn't have lots of money. I needed a job. So actually through my longtime colleague and friend, Dr. David Anderson, he was a year ahead of me in school, and he had got work at the University of Alberta Hospital as an orderly. And so he got me a job, and I spent a year there, and then worked there part-time for several years while I was going through school, like Christmases and summers and Easters and things like that. And during that time, I basically fell in love with the whole aspect of hospitals and medicine and medical care. My father being a pastor, I sort of had that ingrained compassionate side of me, I think. My dad was a very kind and compassionate man. And so that's where that came. And I was stubborn, and I went for it, and worked real hard. And met my wife, Lorna, at the University of Alberta Hospital. She was a nurse, I was a doctor, and there you go. And here we are 51 years later, and still going on strong.
So when you started in medicine in this community, what was it like? What was the community like? And what was practicing medicine like in those days?
Well, some parts of medicine never change because basically you're dealing one-on-one with a person in your clinic. And I think that's the part I have loved the most. I like to relate to people and look after them. But in those days, it was quite a bit different than it is today. The hospital back then that we're still in today, parts of it was still relatively new. So the mornings were taken up making rounds of the hospital. There was, I think when we started, there was one internal medicine specialist, one surgeon, one radiologist, and that's just about it for specialists. And so it was a family practice run hospital. And so all of us worked together, our clinic, Hilltop, we all helped each other and worked together, but we all made rounds every day. We did lots of surgery in those days. I did lots of tonsillectomies and hernias and one thing or another. Others did more aggressive surgery like gallbladders, but all as family doctors. All the anesthetists were family doctors. Walter Payton and Stan and Grant Gibbings and some of those guys did all the anesthesia, and we did all the obstetrics. We didn't have any obstetricians in those days. They came out from Vancouver if we ran into problems. Had some scary times, but it was a wonderful time. And it was an exciting time. We worked the Emerge. It was just a little 4-bed unit, and one of us was on call every night for the emergency room. But it was a grand time, and we all got pretty close. All the clinics and the guys in the clinics got to be good friends. It's very collegial and friendly, and got to appreciate my colleagues in other clinics a great deal. And that changed then. We moved as more and more specialists came into town, and then more and more family doctors. Things changed. We started working more in the mornings in our offices. And now, all these years later, there are no family doctors, apart from one who still does hospital rounds in the hospital, and all of the hospital care now is taken care of by hospitalists. And that's been a dramatic change in the style of medicine. So basically, nowadays we work basically strictly in our offices. And one other big change that came along was the advent of walk-in clinics about 25 years ago. And that's been an okay thing. I think it's been useful to the community. It's not my favorite thing, but because you don't get the walk-in clinic, you don't get as relational, and you don't have the continuity and the follow-up that we do with our own patients in our own clinics.
Have you seen a big change in the community over that period of time when you talk about how medicine has changed in the practice? Has the community followed that? Are you seeing the growth in the community and the changes that are consistent with that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole South Surrey White Rock area has dramatically changed. I mean, some things will never change. We've got the beaches, we've got the pier. Well, the pier had a problem a couple of years ago, but they've redone that. Lots of restaurants, but the community has enlarged. I mean, just count the restaurants around town for one thing. Look at the growth. I mean, when I moved here, there was no shopping center on the corner of 152 and 16th Avenue. It was just trees. And 24th Avenue basically didn't exist except as a little gravel road. So the growth in the community in terms of numbers of people, the high rises that are going in, the condos, the townhouses, I mean, it's just massive. And going along with that, thinking back to the hospital, I mean, the hospital has clearly grown substantially. I mean, we went from a situation, we probably had 20 doctors in town, and we probably have well over 100, maybe 150 now. We've got just about all the specialists. But one of the biggest things that has changed in terms of my own discipline is technology. I can remember I was medical director when the hospital got its first ultrasound unit, and we just thought this was the greatest thing ever. What a terrific tool. And it is, and it still is. But then we had CAT scans and now MRIs, and the hospital has all of those things. And we've got, probably 8 or 10 radiologists who basically specialize in their own area of discipline in radiology. And so that's been a huge change. look at some of the diseases. We used to see lots of colon cancer. Well, we never heard of a colonoscopy in those days. And now we have colonoscopy that has been around for many years now. And we do these little stool tests, which picks up microscopic amounts of blood. We jump into a colonoscopy, and that has saved thousands upon thousands of lives in Canada just by able to do that procedure and get something nipped in the bud.
And I think that your office too has seen the advent of computerization and the things that have happened there. I'm sure your medical records have changed dramatically, and the support staff and the roles they carry. Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Hilltop was the first clinic to go computerized many years ago now. Fraser Health at one point in the mid 2000s wanted to have a large clinic and then multiple small clinics to jump into an electronic medical record using a program called Profile or IntraHealth. And so they asked us if we wanted to be involved with that procedure. So our clinic, Biomedical, computerized in 2007 with this program. We still use it today. It's just been fabulous. I mean, it just makes everything so much cleaner and faster. I like to say that when we went in 2007 into computerization, it saved my career because the paper charts were getting more and more difficult to manage, especially with the advent of more and more insurance and legal work. Computerization just simplified that dramatically. And it's just been a wonderful tool. And then you got wonderful tools like these guys. Yeah. You have instant something, so if I have a question in the office, I can download a little medical program we have called UpToDate, and I can get answers like in seconds. And it's a great tool for me as I'm working with patient right directly face to face in the office. I say, just, give me a half a second, I'll look something up for you. And it's right there instantaneously. And it's just been a huge boon.
And also, I remember talking with you about, you had a nurse practitioner in the hospital and working with diabetics and following up and doing a lot of contact with them. Is that still something that is part of medicine today, or is it growing, or
yeah,
what grew out of
the whole nurse practitioner thing has been great. They're well trained. They're delightful people to work with. In our own clinic, we don't have a nurse practitioner per se. At least she doesn't call herself that. She's a nurse, but we have had her specially trained in all kinds of diabetic care. She's been to numerous courses, and she handles all our diabetic care, starts all the new people on insulins and things like that. And she's been a gold mine and just a huge benefit in our clinic. And but yeah, nurse practitioners advent has been a wonderful thing for the community, and there are several around town now, which is great.
So as moving forward and looking at the changes you've seen over the last 25 years, and if we can believe some of the futurists, they're saying that things are speeding up and having an impact at potentially 100 times what we've seen in the past. What do you see as the future of family medicine and the operations as we look forward?
That's a really good question, but a very difficult question. Because it's hard to answer that one. I see, obviously, technology is getting more and more advanced, not less advanced. I hope, actually, and COVID has brought changes, because now at the moment we're not allowed to see, regular patients in our office very much. We can have a certain number, but most of our work now is done on the phone or virtually. That will change again, but the virtual appointment will always be there at some level in the future. The problem is, and my concern is, that it doesn't become routine. If somebody phones me up and I talk to them on the phone, they say, well, I've hurt my knee. Well, what am I supposed to do over the telephone? They've got to come in. I've got to look at their knee. Just to do an x-ray is not helpful. I need to examine their knee, see what's wrong as best I can, and then order the proper imaging and or referrals to know what to do next. So there's so much that has to be done in person, on site, that you can't do at all over the telephone. And I'm not a proponent of just nonstop virtual appointments only. I think that's a big disservice to the community.
Yeah, and I think that certainly, if you believe some of the research, they're saying that only about 7% of communication is words, and about 38% is your inflections, but 55% of communication is your body language, your facial expressions, and the things that go with that. And certainly, the role of a family physician and the way they support people, not just in a physical sense, but in an emotional sense, and the things they're dealing with. I imagine that would be very difficult if we move forward with the directions that we're going now in terms of the impact of electronic connections and Zooming.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You've got to, and you're right. Your statistics are right. You've got to be able to see people. It's hard for me to grieve with a patient going through a real loss over the telephone.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be done to some extent, but there are some times in a situation where I just need to hold somebody's hand and talk to them. I mean, I lost a granddaughter 4 years ago due to cancer. I needed my doctor. I did. And we needed each other as family. You can't do that over the telephone. You've got to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we all have gone through those types of things, and where we need to have that compassion and caring and reaching out of holding it, whether it's a hug or holding a hand or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And certainly our family physicians have been the people we've turned to in the past to do that. And so as we move forward and looking at the electronic age, whether or not we're going to lose some of that, but certainly some of the research suggests that we're becoming more isolated in that fashion. And certainly the pandemic would be reinforcing or making that more exacerbated in terms of the issues we're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So in terms of all of the challenges that we have and looking forward, how have you been able to maintain contact, meaningful contact? Have you been able to find time for your family and with your family as they were growing up and with your wife? How has that been able? How have you been able to find time to make sure that those connections were still being there and still being as meaningful as they need to be?
Well, okay, that's a really good question. I think in the early days, I have to give a lot of credit to my wife. I tell you right off the bat. I mean, she basically raised our kids, and I got two amazing sons and now 7 grandkids. But I have to give Lauren a lot of credit. Now, we were fortunate that she didn't have to work.
Yeah.
A lot of families these days have to do that. But I worked a lot of hours, a lot of call, a lot of emerge, a lot of obstetrics, a lot of office time. But I'm one of those guys that has always been really, really organized. I'm a little bit OCD, I guess. But I was always, unless I was on call, I was always home at supper time. My job was to bath the boys and put them to bed when they were little guys. And we always made sure to take good holiday time. I always take a couple weeks at Christmas, Easter breaks, and 2 or 3 weeks in the summer. And we got a trailer, and actually I borrowed your dad's trailer in the early days, and we got a trailer, and we went out camping, and we've been all around the world with the kids, and the best memories they have even today are out at Tofino camping in the trailer on the beach, and we got involved in a very healthy church community in the area. And that was a huge support to us, because that's where we made a lot of friendships and relationships that were outside of medicine. I had lots in medicine, but it's great to have it outside of medicine. And, one of my best friends was an electrician. Another was a trucker, and lots of doctor colleagues and great friends. So, you make it work. And I was organized enough that I could be home every day at 6 o'clock to have supper with the family. And then we just made the time for it. And you can do that, but you have to be disciplined.
And that reminds me of my upbringing a little bit, because Dad often went to Royal Columbian Hospital before there was a hospital here. And he came home at 6 o'clock. We were usually watching TV, and he put a switch in so that when we got called and we didn't come, he turned off the power to that part of the house. And Mom always had us sitting there at 6 o'clock. And then somehow Mom made us believe that if we're well behaved, we could go on house calls with him in the evening. And I still don't know how she did that, but I think she just wanted to be sure she got rid of us. But certainly that was it's interesting to hear that your stories are somewhat the same in terms of what was happening in our family. And Mom was incredible in terms of the kind of support she provided as well.
You've got to have that great spouse.
Yeah, and I think in many ways, you've got to have that great spouse, no matter what part of life you're in,
Yes.
what type
Yeah,
of
no,
work you're in.
absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah, and Lorna's been just a gift to me all these years.
yeah, and Laverne has been incredibly supportive to me, despite
Yeah.
all of my. I'm not nearly as well organized as you are, so I've been off in terms of the things that
You've
I'm.
done real well, Gord.
The
I've
things
appreciated your leadership very much in our community.
Well, I feel very blessed in terms of the
Yeah.
opportunities I've had. But in
Yeah.
terms of the future for you, and you're still doing some work on
A
Fridays, I
little bit.
understand. Can you talk about that and the things you see in your future now?
Yeah, well, we're fortunate years ago, well, not that many years, 12 years ago, we bought a property up in the Shuswap country on a small lake. And as it turns out, our youngest son, Darren, moved there full time with his wife and his children. And they've just built a new home, and our 100-year-old house is still there. And so we spend a lot of time up there. We were up there actually this year from the 1st of May till Thanksgiving. And apart from a few trips home just to do some business stuff. And that's been a marvelous thing for me. I like to putter. I'm a putterer. And Darren and I like to do stuff together. So, we took down an old barn and built a new barn, and we built a dock, and I chop wood, and I just do stuff. I have a tractor and an ATV and just have a great time. And I've got good friends up there as well. But I love medicine. And when I gave up my full-time practice December 31st last year, and then I've done a couple of locums, filled in for some guys in my office who were on vacation. And now I'm working on Fridays just to help out one of the guys, and I'll do some extra locums. And I've worked for the last 10 years as an assessor with the College of Physicians and Surgeons, and I can keep that going for a while. I'm one of these guys who have to do something. And so I'm just nice being back at the office again, even just for a day a week. And it'll be a bit more than that when I do some week or 2 week locums for guys when they're on holidays. And yeah, my life has turned a new corner. My brother lives here in White Rock. We're very close. We have lots of good things together, and Keith well.
Yeah.
Another brother out in Langley area, and I have a great family. My other son David is here with his wife and their kids, and they just live over at the Arasha farm on 192 and 16th, and we're close to them. Yeah, life is rich. I mean, I am so blessed in every aspect of my life. I'll just be really glad when COVID's away and we can all get together again.
Oh, we will, yes. So when you describe your siblings and your family, what is it about your parents that sort of instilled those types of values and connectedness and meaningfulness to both your faith, but your life more broadly?
Well, my dad was a very busy man. I mean, he was a clergyman of a large church, and the only clergyman in that church. He didn't have assistants. Later on, he had an assistant, and so he worked a lot. But he was a very gracious and very kind man. I would say a pretty strict disciplinarian. Spare the rod, spoil the child kind of thing. I think he believed in that. And my mom was a very kind and gracious and hospitable woman. And so we had, Sunday was church, and oftentimes there were guest speakers. And so we'd always have guests over, and we were encouraged with three teenage boys to have all our friends come over. And so our place was a place we'd come over and play games and play ping pong and watch TV and horse around and things like that. And my parents encouraged that with the 3 boys. And so we've been close all these years. My brothers and all their kids all live not too far away. And so we get together as a group of 40 for family gatherings at Christmas, although it won't happen this Christmas. But yeah, family was important and to all of us. And so I'm still in touch with my nieces and nephews, and I'm loved by them, and the love goes both ways.
And some of those values seem to be coming perhaps out of some of our rural development, with people growing up on farms and having those connections, and so many of the small community centers and churches as the center of the community.
Yeah.
Are we losing some of that as we become more urbanized and the challenges that come with that and becoming more mechanized? Do you think we're losing some of those connections and how important they are for our social and spiritual well-being?
That's a real risk. I would hope it doesn't have to be that way. I think, well, in my own case, church is still very important. And so we're faithful goers. Well, not right now, but we can Zoom it for now. That's been an important part of my life. But other community things, there are lots of things to be involved in, and where you develop close relationships. It can be church, it can be Rotary, it can be whatever you choose it to be. But that's where relationships are built, and that's critical, because if we don't do that, then we become islands, and then we just become very introspective and self-centered. And we want to reach out, we want to meet with people, we want to love on people and be loved in return. We want to have social interaction with people. We need to, we need to stay engaged, and that's optional. But yeah, are we right? Yeah, I think there's a lot of lonely people sitting in little condos all over the urban areas that are desperate for relationship and don't have it. Yeah, I can recall going into meeting people in the extended care unit when I was when my dad was there for 2 years after his stroke, and talking to the nurses, and there were people there who hadn't had a visitor in 2 or 3 years, not even a single family member, and things like that just break your heart. And we don't want that. We need to stay connected. I know you're close to your family. I know quite a few of your family, and they're lovely people, and you're tight with them, as I am, and that's just a gift.
Yeah, it's such a gift, and so many people don't have that. And I think that's probably wherever you go in the world, most people care about family and community, and in some ways getting ahead in life. And we're kind of blessed in Canada and in our community to have an opportunity for that many parts of the world they don't have.
Yeah, you and I are very blessed, boys.
We certainly are.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so very much for taking the time to do this. Your compassion and your generosity and kindness are so important, and certainly the way you've combined that with your profession and your commitment to our community are to be lauded, and we're very grateful for that. Thank you so very much. Thank you for joining us today on Community Connections. Please tune in to our next show as more amazing people share their wonderful stories. If you haven't already, please click on the red subscribe button below, right down there, and view our updates. Feel free to leave any thoughts or comments that you may have. We're always trying to do a better job of connecting this wonderful community. Thanks again for joining, and until next time, keep connecting. Thank you.